Douglaston, we are live.
We are live.
The looks good here on my end. So yeah, we were talking about yesterday. Tom figured out that he didn't actually own Ethereum, and that really pissed him off. And then I figured out that Google was using my real name on all of its products. That pissed me off. So we were both just talking about how you think something works one way, but then it actually doesn't, and then it ends up pissing you off.
What we're making is not for those people necessarily. We're giving Mr. Beekeeper, and you can tell them what we mean by Mr. Beekeeper, an edge over, the Tower of Babel right behind you.
Right.
The people who built these things, they're so idiosyncratic.
I feel like blockchain is becoming a new WordPress for you.
It is, and for good reason. I'm not a Luddite. I've been around long enough, and I'm sure as you have to see through hype. I want to see what the end product is. That's all I care about. So that's one of the principal complaint about blockchain since its debut 10 years ago, is that a lot of people who really want to get into it and really want to change the world, they haven't really seen where these tools are yet, these experiences. It's like all the energy and resources still talking about blockchain. Okay, blockchain, fine. Can we just get over that introduction? Let me see what the real, breaking the fourth wall is for these people. And in dev world, development world, whether front end and back end, 10 years is a very long time. It's almost like, why hasn't anything picked up?
Part of the challenge with the lack of innovation is with most exits, most money gets made in the technology industry by selling your company to either Facebook or Google, who either sort of re-engineers your product into something they can use or just shuts you down because they don't want you out there doing something weird that might threaten their market dominance. So I think what you're really seeing is just monopolistic behavior from market incumbents that are just undermining novelty for good reasons from their perspective, right? I mean, you don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel every 5 years because it's just it's a pain in the ass for people. It's like if we all just switch from cars to sort of like electric enclosed bicycles or something, like everyone would be like, what? That's a pain in the ass, but let's just use a car.
That could be the case. It could be that there are many developers right now who people who make apps, they have to make the calculation of why should I spend time making something new from blockchain? It would just be easier if I make something that's that you could sell to the Tower of Babel behind you.
The challenge is and this is kind of where I was texting you that stuff this morning. Traditionally, if you created a tech business, you would create a product, go to a venture capitalist, raise some money, do the dance, do the show, and then, God willing, knock on wood, everything goes well. You sell your product to Facebook or Google for $130 million, and you look like a genius, and you walk away with $15 million in your pocket as the founder, and you're a rock star. So that model goes away in blockchain. So there's all these VCs are now like, well, our special sauce goes away, right? Like anybody, in the blockchain world, you just put a little, like that thing I sent you for, fuck Joe Biden coin this morning, right? You just put a little button on a website. It's like, here, click here and give me money. And anybody can give them money. And sort of, I think they raised a few $1 million or something, just selling Let's Go Brandon coin.
How much do they have?
I was a few million. I think they gave
a few million of their currency, not a few million.
Well, which is trading actively on the exchange and is, in theory, valued in the millions of dollars. Now, I think if they went to sell it all at once, they might have some trouble doing that. So it's not directly convertible. But at the market, I mean, neither is a a tech startup either, right? I mean, you might have a $80 million valuation, but you can't go to the bank with that.
I
So,
really like the beekeeper story you sent me. It just says everything.
by the way, just so if anybody's listening, the beekeepers, it's a guy who makes honey, and then he created a currency based on the value of his honey, because honey is a very durable product. You can put it in a jar and leave it on a shelf, and it'll stay for generations. Tom likes that because he feels like there's something real behind the money. But, by the way, I completely agree with you, and I think I've got to add in the pledge system that you add collateral to your pledge. Like, I'm going to give you
Jar of honey. You
jar,
could have a jar of honey.
an iPhone,
You know what?
jar of honey, a car, plane ticket, whatever, something.
Okay, well, what you sent is a good example. The LBJ one. That's cool. I don't. How long did it take for them to do that?
Like 10 minutes.
Well, 10 minutes for a genius.
No, that's why I said we should do something like this for Darkcoin, and then just get it out there and get it going, and then start building around it as we collect people, interest in what we're doing.
Sure. I'm just saying I don't want to, like, if we ever have to go in front of a bunch of VCs and talk, if ever, that we don't make, oh, it's a blockchain thing. No, I mean, for me, that's not exciting. You get what I mean? It will be built in blockchain. I just don't want, because you see a lot of the whatever blockchain app is out there built by these technocratic nerds, for them.
On a blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. For them, it's blockchain first. Like, okay, well, that's fine. It's a blockchain faucet. Oh, okay. What does it do? It's blockchain. Is okay. Well, it just water comes out. Oh, okay.
I had the same frustration like 10 years ago in social media, because everybody was like, "Oh, Facebook's this new market," and I'd be like, "No, it's the same people. Like, we haven't discovered a new planet."
Because if you think about Facebook and Twitter is nothing more than a truncated version of e-blogger. Remember e-blogger back then when people were blogging stuff? That's all that is.
And it created some efficiencies, and like Facebook, one piece of content could reach millions of people very, very quickly, which was very difficult to do in the blog world. So I thought it was Darkcoin. Then maybe we need to sort of figure out, like, what is that? How do we want to do it like the Let's Go Brandon coin, or do we want to create our own blockchain? And just trade, Ethereum for Darkcoin, or let people. So I don't know. I can make some proposals and sort of pitch you on some ideas, and then let you kind of push
anything
back.
that's less work for me, because at this point, I got to be on.
It's not work. It's more just it's thinking work. It's not programming work at this point.
I have to read up on some stuff and learn some new stuff, which is fine. But I don't want to take too much time away from also having to develop the game part and all that. There's a lot that still needs to be done on that.
Like those Supersonic Aviation companies whose planes haven't actually flown yet. They have pretty marketing videos, though. My favorite story of this sort of scam story, or almost a scam story, is this guy. He goes and raises all this money to build liquid natural gas ports on the East Coast, because he's like, America's going to run short of energy, and we're going to have to import all this LNG. He raises all this money, builds all these sort of big tanker port facilities, and then all of a sudden, liquid natural gas prices drop, and American energy sort of normalizes in a way that people didn't think it was going to. And then what happens is he's like, "Oh my God, I'm totally bankrupt. I have zero money." And then out of nowhere comes fracking, where all of a sudden America becomes a liquid natural gas exporter. So he completely pivots his business from being an importer to an exporter of LNG, and then immediately returns himself back to sort of wealth and prosperity from sitting on these completely useless ports. I always like that as the guy who starts selling one completely nonsensical project and then pivoting it into another Whoops, yeah, we don't do that. Actually, we do the exact opposite of what I said we were going to do.
Do you think there's a chance that that will happen to us?
Absolutely. Look at the Pinterest guys. Pinterest guys did not start making Pinterest. They started making this like Reddit kind of thing with chat rooms, and they were all over the place. They just stumbled onto Pinterest by mistake, and then it kind of took off on them, and then they were sort of like, oh, I guess we should do that. But they didn't come up with it. It sort of was this thing that just exploded in front of them, and then they just kept sort of like they just got out of its way. So all right, so I'm gonna put some ideas together for you about what I think kind of an initial dark coin offering might look like.
There's still some things I haven't haven't quite mastered. So like with digital currency, right? There is no intermediary, right? Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
But if we are the initial issuing authority, doesn't that make us kind of like an intermediary?
Not necessarily, because we made the decision up front how many to issue. Let's say we issue 1,000,000 dark coins. And you use this thing called a smart contract. So you create essentially an offering of 1,000,000 coins, and then once those 1,000,000 coins are sold, it's over. You have to do a second offering, which you can, but then you have two separate events that aren't related. So
Okay.
essentially we're the genesis uh, of the currency, but we don't function as the intermediary because the blockchain provides that service, provides that transparency through its immutability.
But all future dark coins would trace its origin to us. It would, right? Like not everything that'll be created from the moment that Dark World issues its very first IOU
Yeah, I mean, I probably want to
comes
write it
back.
down for you. I think we do it differently. I think we do a ton of, instead of one smart contract, I think everybody would do their own smart contract. The point is to create as much decentralization as possible. Typically, if you were to create like the Let's Go Brandon coin, FJB. Somebody wrote a contract that I think sort of said, okay, we're going to issue FJB and have a maximum of 40 million of them. And so then that was the contract. They put that on I think it's the Binance blockchain or something. And then they put it in the Binance exchange, and they said, look, anybody can buy these. And then they marketed it, right? Click here, and we're going to set an initial offering price of 1 BNB for 1 FJB. And then we're going to let that float on the exchange. And then whatever happens, happens, and it'll go up or down, and life will go on. And then when all 40 million are sold, the contract is fulfilled and everything ends. So in our world, each pledge is its own contract.
Okay.
So if I said, hey, Tom, I'm going to make a pledge to you to give you 100 dark coin, and I'm going to use my new Google phone as collateral for that. So there's my 100 dark coin. I'm going to say it's, we got to pick an initial amount just to float it. So let's say give it a 1-to-1 because why not? So it's worth $100. So it's backed by my phone. And then you can either accept that or reject it. And then if you accept it, that contract created 100 dark coin on our dark blockchain backed by the pledge of my phone that you have accepted.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because we're doing things a little differently than all the other digital currencies out there, right? Because they are either like Ethereum is mined. It's the value is based on.
Look, see,
Yeah.
it's pretty.
I know. Didn't know, I thought that was maybe your housekeeper left it there because it's very gay.
No, I
But
did it.
do
I
you know
did
what I mean? Like,
because I don't want my Mark, who's 12, to take it to school, and this is so hideous and ugly that no 12-year-old would take it by accident.
but like all the other digital currencies are mine. That their value is
Uh,
based on that. So, in our case,
some are,
we
some
have.
aren't, but yeah.
Do you know of any other currencies out there that have this securitization like what we're proposing?
NFTs are essentially securitized currencies, right? They're being secured by the piece of artwork.
Okay.
Or you've got some people are like, they go buy some third-rate Picasso, and then they're like, oh, a piece of a Picasso, and then they say, okay, you've got whatever lady with
I
loot.
tell you what's really cool and interesting for me. Just an idea. Doesn't mean it's practical. You and I go to Sweden and find Mr. Beekeeper.
You like
This is the original
uh,
clover.
you Tom, you can pledge honey for all your dark.
I will pledge honey. How about that? Maybe
You can write Mr. Beekeeper up in Schnuckenbogen and get him to send you some of his honey that you can pledge.
you were explaining how um, the, the the amount of coins are generated in dark world. You issue a smart contract. It's backed by your glittery phone.
My gay frog phone.
Your gay frog phone. And then, okay. Do you really go to the gym and jiu-jitsu with that?
Yes. I bought it completely by mistake. I got this new Google Pixel XL, and the Google case was back ordered, so it's not shipping for 6 weeks. So I needed like a cheap. I went on Amazon. I got a really inexpensive case, and I thought I was buying a clear plastic one. I didn't realize I was buying a glitter frog one, because the picture they showed was just said clear plastic. So I was like,
What does Javier have to say about that? He must be
He's-
tickled.
He thinks it's sufficiently weird that nobody mentions it because it's just discordant.
Well, when I came over the other day, I noticed that right away. I thought maybe some girl had left the phone in your house. I wouldn't have guessed.
Very much it's a
This is so
8-year-old girl phone.
okay, but wait, that cover did not come with the sticker though.
Yes.
The cover came with the sticker. This made it worse.
It's like it was an 8-year-old girl. It cost like $6 on Amazon. I literally bought the least expensive one I could find, and I spent maybe a second looking at it before I clicked buy. And I don't really care because in 3 weeks I'm getting the cool black one from Google, and then I'm going to throw my 8-year-old girl one in the garbage. Maybe I'll keep it. Maybe I'll just embrace my inner princess.
One of the things we'll have to do in the gaming panel, yes, just keep that up. It's mesmerizing. Is I think we can do a much better job of explaining how dark coins are generated for first-time users. I think that would be a great design challenge. Like in the LBJ example you sent me, he did a 4.5 minute video, and I think that's too long. So
no, the whole FJB coin is hilarious.
Yeah.
I feel like you're gonna the Beekeeper is gonna feature prominently in whatever.
No, I'm not gonna force. I'm just saying, but you could appreciate why I'm into Beekeeper. Hey, listen, you started it.
I know.
So, I mean, you sent me the example. But what's the story in Sweden, by the way? I don't know, what was the situation that
often what happens is, particularly in smaller towns, you literally have currency shortages. Like, do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there were coin shortages just because everybody's movement patterns shifted so quickly that the coins started piling up in weird parts of the country, and the Treasury Department was literally renting giant trucks and driving like millions of nickels around the country to reposition them to get rid of the shortages. They were just in the wrong place.
Okay.
Like that, like if you just imagine, everybody goes to Walmart and gets change, and then they take the change and then they go spend it, or they take it to the bank and go, look, I've got this pot of change, give me paper for it because I don't want this big pot of, or they put it in those coin machines at the grocery stores, right? Like they collect all their change every week, they go dump it into the coinomatter or whatever that thing's called, and then it gives them a coupon that they go use and buy groceries with it. So all of those coins were collecting in place. For whatever, people stopped doing that, they did something else. So all the systems that were set up to get the coins moving the way they needed to, so that the Walmart people had nickels to give out to change, stopped working because nobody was putting their coins in the coinomat anymore.
So Mr. Beekeeper's economy, they didn't have enough.
Probably something happened that just the town didn't have enough liquidity or circulation of money, and he said, okay, well, I'll add some currency into the town's economy so we can keep people keep doing stuff. At some point, I've got, it's a good example, right? I've got a phone, it costs $1,000, and I want to buy something from you for $20. Well, if there aren't any $20 bills, I need a way to turn this into a $20 bill. And currency just does that.
Well, they said a long time ago that was what might have happened between one, a Cro-Magnon and another Cro-Magnon tribe. They started, hey, here's a seashell. It's pretty. It's hard to find. Can I have that goat?
Yeah, but the seashell acted as a proxy for a call on whatever. Because a lot of these, the seashells were a good example, right? So a lot of times, what would happen is there would be all this trading that would go on within the village, and then literally once a year or once a quarter or something, people would sit down and they would just net out all the accounts. I'd gotten 3 chickens from you, but you got 4 loaves of bread from me. So 3 chickens are worth 5 loaves of bread. So I owe you a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And then we're even. So we would have used all this currency to do that, but ultimately we're kind of netting out the transactions with each other, because in these small kind of older, not prehistoric, but sort of pre-modern communities, that was very flat economic structure. Most people lived very similarly and earned money in a very similar way. So they just sort of collectively figured it all out with this endless kind of, okay, I owe you 4 cows. How about I give you my daughter and she can marry your fat kid? And you're like, okay, fine, I'll take that for 3 cows, but you also owe me a cow. And you're like, what? No,
yeah.
come on, it's worth 4 cows. There's like all that whole nonsense went on.
And then later on, they figure out, well, it's like you said, that's where the scalability thing becomes an issue, right?
Well, money,
you can't be
money comes into broad usage when the Romans need a way to pay soldiers when they're far away from Rome.
And you can't supply them like 6 cows. That's
Well,
not practical.
Cows around with them on their battle, right? It just didn't make sense.
So it's an I owe you a cow.
It's an IOU account. Basically, yeah, that's all it is. It's the Roman state giving you a thing that goes, hey, when you get home, you get a cow.
Anyway, that's a cool story. I will put up the link in the video. And we added this.
To the honey man.
Mr. Beekeeper.
Excellent.
Currency.
So I'm gonna write a little, here's what I think a 1-page website to sell Darkcoin or to create Darkcoin should look like.
Is there anything in the other example you sent that we can appropriate? The Joe Biden.
So because they're literally doing a 1-to-1 trade, right? I think they're people who own BNB. So essentially, you would take your Ethereum, you would use your Ethereum to buy BNB,
Which I don't own, because I just found out which I don't own. Coinbase owns it in my stead.
right.
It's so weird.
But they would probably do that transaction for you for a modest fee, and then you would take the BNB and you would convert that into FJB. So it's a multi-step process.
Who does the conversion rate? The
The
Joe
exchanges,
Biden people, or?
no, those are set on the exchange charges a fee to execute the transaction, and then each blockchain will also charge a fee to register the transaction.
I'm not going to ask who owns the exchange. I think that'll be another video.
The exchange is owned by the people who own the coin that's backed. Think of all these coins as shares in these blockchain projects.
But I mean that the exchange, this hub where all the stuff is going on, that sounds like a single entity, though.
It is, but it's the shareholders are the people who
Okay.
own the BNB coin. They there's probably a rule in the BNB contract that says, we were talking about the sort of 5% inflation, or a certain percentage of inflation that would go to pay the operating costs for what we're doing. So there's probably some just annual fee that the operators charge the holders of BNB. It's like a wealth tax. Think of it as a wealth tax, right? Like, we're going to charge you 3% of your holdings every year, and we're just going to print 3% more coin through a kind of an inflation.
What if something happens to BNB? Can people go elsewhere to continue their exchange, or is BNB the only destination?
There's tons of you and I could start an exchange tomorrow.
I'm interested in learning what the back end technology is for that, because who knows? We said we could call it dark exchange.
All you're really doing is it's a 4-part transaction, right? So let's say you have Ethereum and I have BNB. So, and just to make the math easy, they're equally valued. So there's a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain that takes your 10 Ethereum and puts it into my account. And then there's a simultaneous transaction on the BNB blockchain that takes my 10 BNB and puts it into your account. And the function of the exchange is to track all of those paired transactions and make a market out of that.
Okay.
And ideally, if nobody's trading, then there are market makers who will come in and start to speculate and go, oh, look, there's no activity going on in these two pairs. Maybe I could start creating some activity which will move the price, and then that will pull other people into the market, create some further activity that will allow me to make money. So it's all the exchange is doing is registering a pair of transactions that occur and sort of saying, okay, like, if you give me 10 Ethereum, I'll give you 10 BNB. And then make sure that we do it concordingly so that, I don't trick you, right? I say, I tricked you, not giving you my thing. You lose, sucker. So the exchange makes that transaction, forces that transaction. The holy grail of all this blockchain stuff right now is something that's called blockchain interoperability. So it's like, if I want to use Ethereum to buy Bitcoin, right now I have to go through an exchange that authenticates that will kind of provide a trusted service to make sure that transaction executes. Whereas in the future, ideally the Bitcoin blockchain would talk to the Ethereum blockchain, and you wouldn't need an exchange anymore. In theory, you could sort of create two contracts, but then there's always a way to hack it, and so that's why the exchanges have a role to play, certainly today.
This technology should just be humming in the background and not be all about blockchain per se.
It's like the early days of electricity, right? Where, there was just all these wires everywhere, and people were sort of like, what?
Yes, But now that you brought up that example, they figured out for that to become marketable, let's just hide all the wires, and all you got to do is a switch. That's all I'm saying about where we're in the stage right now, because you're staring at wires, and I'm saying if you want people to love electricity, just give them that switch. And we're not seeing that yet.
But that's where,
Hopefully that will change.
but that's where you had the central standards people come in and make everybody use the same switches and the same voltage. And like, you go to Europe, every freaking country has a different plug. You think the United Nations has a massive budget and, supposed to figure out things like that.
I'm not a fan of the UN, by the way, and that's also another video. I don't care for them.
Somebody,
The UN, you know what?
Get together. Let's make all the plugs.
No, why didn't you look behind you? There's the UN right. There's your first UN right there, right behind you.
Absolutely. But my point is, don't hold your breath for everything to work properly, because you and I are going to be long dead by the time blockchain interoperability happens.
We don't want people, the FBI, to be kicking down the doors and grabbing hardware and software because they can't, right? This is
right.
It's out there. It's floating around. It literally it belongs in the spiritual realm right now. It's all over.
They could just grab you.
Well, if they do, bring me some honey.
I'll bring you some.
Maybe
honey.
You could buy, just bribe the guards, the prison guards at Rikers with beekeepers coins, honey coins.
The sports drink of profits.
There you go.